without further ado, we'll bring on Ryan Bechmanis. He's the assistant head coach and defensive coordinator at Queen's University.
No, I appreciate the time to chat here, and hopefully you guys will get something out of this. This is just something that Rick and I were chatting about in terms of everything that's going on and how can we maybe reduce contact in practice and keep player safety at the forefront, especially at high school levels and the university level for us. And this is honestly something that I've been adapting for a while. I know the guys, when I was at Carleton, the four of us that are on the call here and work together, we did a lot of stuff around contact in practice and how to figure it out. So some of it's stolen from that, and some of the stuff's what we've adapted and learned over the years. I think it kind of starts, obviously, when you talk about the contact in practice, is what are your coaching staff roles and responsibilities around it? It's something that everybody's got to be on the same page with and working together. Then we talk about kind of like teaching the contact skills and how we want to teach it. How do we want to go about it? Then different ways to reduce the contact in practice through various periods, what we're trying to do, and then obviously looking at it over the course of a season. So in terms of the coaching staff, I think that's obviously at the start is to kind of get together as a staff and set your priorities in terms of what style of play do you want and how do you want to teach it. So what's kind of important to you in terms of the practice structure? How much do you value those high contact periods in practice, and how much do you want to try to move away from some of those and do different things in there? I know from having a chance to kind of observe some pro camps, it's all barely any pads, all hips, hands, and feet. Unless you're working with Sharps helping out with the O-line and you get knocked on your ass. But that's, I don't know if you remembers that one, but that wasn't a fun thing. It's definitely something you want to do because that's what the guys have to do when they get to the highest level there. So it's kind of what emphasis are you going to put on playing smart in practice with your players? And obviously it starts with leadership of the coaching staff, something you all need to be on the same page for, whether you set terms for it, whether you talk about it before each practice, but how you want to do it and how you want to look at it. And then you have to communicate this to the players. You have to outline the parameters ahead of time. You have to explain to them why these things are in place, firm believer in that, and why you want to do it. But then you have to take time to teach it. It's got to be in your playbook or in your meetings. You have to walk through it. And then you always, throughout the year, you have to make points of addressing the good and bad examples as they happen. Review it on film if you get a chance to do it, but don't let it go. The worst thing you can do is kind of let somebody get away with it, not reinforce it, positive or negative, and then things can spiral out of control from there. You can still be a very physical team with this. It's just about playing smart in practice. You also want to empower your leaders on the team to get their buy-in from it, and they're making sure they're enforcing it throughout, because hopefully this is something that the coaches can definitely put their foot down early in the start of the year, but the players can police as you get down the road. And that's a sign of good leadership on your team and good buy-in when they're doing that. So kind of when you're teaching the contact skills, the biggest thing, obviously, as we all know, is getting the head out of the contact. This has to be emphasized though across all skills, from blocking to the block, destruct, disengaging, to your tackling, to your striking. And you kind of drill it in there and eliminate the majority of head contact in practice the best we can. Especially in the line of scrimmage scenarios. That's where we found the most is happening actually in practice with us, is that we've been fortunate enough to be working with a gentleman named Alan Champagne. He's a former player. He played at North Carolina and started with his MD, PhD here at Queen. So I got to work with him a little bit. He's also involved with neurokinetics and Football Canada. And he's done a great job of educating our staff on things around this and our players. He also has some helmet sensors, which we're very lucky to have in there. But one of the things he started with is at the one training camp a couple years ago, he filmed kind of the similar movement drills you look at going into contact, and then kind of went through a couple of things with us in terms of how we can make it better. So how do you avoid using your head into contact? Why does it happen? And things like that. So we've taken a lot from him on that. So that's where we get to kind of starting with the hands and feet and our fundamentals. So as you all know, like the feet will set up getting into block. Your feet are going to set up getting into tackles, and your vision and your keys and things like that. So you try to simplify all your terminology on how to strike and tackle and define it to the players. So for example, part of the exercise we're doing with our tackling right now is just aiming points for the guys and where they put their head on all the aiming point, what leverage do they have, things like that. So you want to teach that stuff as you go into it. I think the days are gone now where you just put the nose on the football or right down the middle of the pipe there on the guys. So you kind of have to work on keeping your head out of contact. And you can teach these fundamental skills without equipment on. You can teach it with no helmet on when you strike somebody in practice. You can teach getting into the tackle without any gear. So it's things like that, and the players will understand that, because the minute they try to put their head into it when they don't have equipment on, or you're walking through, they can notice it. Then you just have to do a good job to reinforce these things the whole way through when you get your gear on. So you can, again, knowing where the pads are on and where you have to slow things down, how you teach it, rep it, review it, and constantly emphasize this with the head out of contact in there. So for example, I'll have a couple clips of things after. I'll just run through the presentation first and show a couple clips of some drills that we've done. But the footwork and the tracking when you go into tackle. So it builds off Gabe's pursuit stuff, where whatever angle you're taking, how you can set yourself up, and have them pause it just before they get into that contact position to see where they are, see what the fit is, what their leverage, where their eyes, where's their head in terms of the contact relationship. And then you can rep as many of these low contact or non-contact scenarios. So when you get, it's all about hips, hands, and feet, that can kind of bring things to light if you're not doing something well, or if you're always reaching going into a tackle, if it's a tap off scenario, that can really change how you coach and what drills you do to work on things going forward. And we try to do this kind of in everyday drills. There's a tackle component, usually very light or minimal contact. There's circuits involved always at the start of training camp, on our bye week, and wherever else we need to fit them in throughout the season as well. So kind of move on to the next one here. So the tempos in practice. So what we've done, and this is part of the stuff I worked on with JP Colson and Halsey, is you kind of determine a tempo for all of your periods. So whether you want to use red, yellow, and green for your tempos, or a whiz, a thud, a live, that's up to you. It's just a matter of terminology, but these are clearly defined and outlined to all of the players. So this is something that we'll talk about from day one, our opening meeting, and we basically define what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in each of these tempos. So for example, in the red or whiz, it's like you're just tapping off on the guy. You're not going for the ball strip. You're not trying to get the ball on the ground. You're not playing through somebody's back. It's all very conscious in what you're doing and being smart as you enter every contact scenario. It's still fast and it's still live on the line, but it's hands out. It's always through extension. We're not throwing anybody to the ground. Everybody's staying up and things like that. The yellow or thud periods, you can north stop the ball, you can wrap them up, but nobody goes to the ground. Everything stays up, and you kind of build it from there. And it's teaching them how to practice. Every time we would do this, the first 5 plays of our very first team period of the year are essentially walk through, rep it, and coach it up as it goes. So we kind of will walk through what's acceptable on a play, then we'll run a play. We'll pause it. Everybody's watching. Everybody's getting the same coaching points. We review those plays on film that first meeting at night as well. And then we just keep reinforcing it from there. So there's different things you can do in terms of tempoing your periods. There's always room to go with that higher tempo in the thud or the live scenario potentially. One thing we try to do with our live tackling is limit the space in which it takes place. It's not big open field drills. When we're trying to get guys down to the ground, it's a simple, you have one of those step over bags between a linebacker and a running back, and the bag's 2 yards from the goal line. There's 3 yards on either side, and it's basically back pickups the ball, you can go left or right, and you're making a live tackle. But there's no big run up. There's this very small condensed space where you do it, because you eliminate that big run up where that physics builds into this, where you have those big collisions. So we try to limit those spaces when we're doing it, whether it's a board drill for the O-line, D-line, just a run block drill too, that you can get contact, but it's obviously emphasizing getting your hands in front of you and protecting each other, especially protecting your teammates. Overlying theme through all this is being smart with your own teammates on practice, no liberties, no blindside blocks, things like that. In any controlled situation where it is live, you want your guys to err on the side of caution. It's protecting your teammates at all costs here. You gotta, much as you compete O&D in practice, you need those guys to play in a game. So it's just getting that level of understanding within your team players and team culture. And then obviously the second man in stuff doesn't happen at all in practice. You don't want anybody doing that in the practice scenario. That's where in those higher tempo periods where it's thud or live, you want your second man in going for the ball strip. And obviously the DBs, you have to coach them up and to be smart with the defenseless receivers. And it's the same with the receivers in terms of that peel back block. Although that rule has kind of helped that scenario out in practice a little bit, that being in there. So you got to coach them up those ways still. And then another thing we've done a little bit in our practices is use somewhat of a double whistle system. So we'll go in where head coach on the whistle in a team period, where he thinks the ball is stopped, he'll blow one whistle, but the play keeps going. So you get your guys pursuing. Once that first whistle goes, there's no contact, but you get your guys running and chasing things down. It allows the ball carriers to finish without trying to break 6 or 7 arm tackles. Once that first whistle goes, pursue, keep running, double whistle can end it. So there's things like that that you can use in there as well. I also have some clips of kind of a box tackle drill that we would do where it's just a tap off, kind of a more of an open field tackle, actually really similar to Gabe's 2-on-1 pursuit there. But things like that we've been using. And then you can play fast, you can play aggressive, you can still blitz, you can still do all that stuff in practice. You can still run your goal line formations and walk through it. You just got to be smart with the contact and managing the tempo and speed, but you can still go full go. And I think in those scenarios too, if you're doing a goal line set for the offense, the defensive guys know, okay, let's play off the ball, play with their hands, play aggressive. But hey, it's not about you in this period. It's about kind of the offense fitting up. And it's the same when the defensive period. You want to make sure you're working your fits, but still at a good tempo where you can kind of frame blocks, spill blocks, and engage on that side. So you definitely want to kind of lay some expectations around all that stuff. And then throughout the season, you can kind of build up and level off as you want. So we always start training camp by teaching the fundamentals, walk before you can run. Every single year, we're teaching tackling circuits early. We're walking through our tempos. We end up building towards somewhat of a live period at some point in the first 4 or 5 days of our training camp. Sometimes earlier now because our camps keep getting shorter and shorter. But you're preparing your players for all the different situations. You're just controlling the atmosphere in which this happens. And then you can change the tempo throughout the season. You got to think of the big picture and over the course of a practice, but you can build up to peak contact periods, whether it's a live day, a live period, or a more physical period in practice, but then the rest around there. We do have practices and days where we are getting after a little bit more inside runs, a lot more thud. You're getting going with things, but that's usually not the first day of a week. For us, the Tuesday, you're kind of making sure the assignments are right. The guys know where to line up. They see the opposing formations or fronts. And then the second day, we can get after it a little bit more. Then we peel back on the Thursday and then right back on the Friday. So, and it's also about kind of managing the body. So you've got to gauge the physical and mental status of your team. If they're beat up, give them some whiz periods where it's light tempo. They're just flying around. And if they're sluggish, maybe throw a little more thud in there or do a compete drill at the start of practice with a little more contact to get it going. So we kind of gauge the mentality of our team and change things potentially on a daily or a weekly basis with that. And then really, to be honest, I don't think there's a set guideline for this. You have to understand your team, your situation, and what you guys need to be kind of working on. And then obviously you got to review and adapt as you go through it. If it's working, the team's performing, tweak a couple little things here and there. If it's not working, got to figure out why. So changing it up. And I know Rick asked me kind of about, do we chart missed tackles and things like that? And that's something we do try to do, but more so to figure out the why so we can work the drills to fix it and things around there. So drill the part that you need to fix. And then throughout the season too, as you get into it, you can emphasize one side of ball or the other. So again, tell the DBs in a certain period, it's an offensive period. So cover your guy, be on him like glue, but then when the ball's in the air, he's catching it, he's coming down with it. And same thing in terms around the line of scrimmage, in terms of the inside run. If it's an offensive period, you can fit in the hole, we can wrap up, or you tap off and let the running back kind of get going so the whole play you don't disrupt the play and it gets going on that. And there's always time where we'll compete ones versus ones, so to speak. And whether it's a hurry up or a certain situation that we'll get after it where it's thud and it's both sides competing, but there's definitely other times where it's offensive emphasis or defensive emphasis that we adjusted a little bit in there. One thing I did put in, this is kind of what we used this past year in terms of our compete tempos. So just to how we break it up, and at the start of every period, we would tell the guys it's a whiz period, it's a live period, it's a thud period. And they know it's on the practice plan. The coaches communicate it. The players all understand what it means because they were given this and shown this. We found it really useful. It does help so the guys understand it and what to do. And the big thing too is the second man in for the defense, where they can take away the ball, where they can't, how we want to go through it. So this is just a couple things that we've done through in there.
Okay.
I got a couple drills I can, I'll throw up. Just give me one. Perfect. So we're working kind of a tackle to a punch. So our takeaway technique here, but we'll just do this. So the emphasis on that, we know we're going to end up on the ground. So we just kind of put it by the crash mat so we can just work our punch tackle technique as we go into it, but we're okay bringing the guy to the ground because we just use the mat there. So some of the guys, especially the schools that have a track program, steal that high jump mat in the fall and make use of it for a lot of this stuff here. So a couple different ways you can go about it. You can change the angle where they're going, but at least the guy knows he's getting tackled. He's just not getting pancaked on the ground the whole time. And it lets you violently work your takeaway techniques while you're doing it, and getting them onto the mat and getting them onto the ground there. So it's not too bad within that one. Another one we've done is just, I know the angle's bad, but we have our player here who's got the bag with him. So we're working kind of a 2-on-1 vice tackle here with 2 DBs coming out and back. But what we do is we just have him hold the blocking pad on his arm so the guy can come in with a physical contact. We're not drilling our own guy all the time in practice here. And then we can still work the second man in takeaway stuff as we go into it. So we can, obviously the patterns you can change it up. This was just part of a circuit we did early. So now where we're going up, we can fit up on the guy, we can drive our feet through contact, and we can work our second man in to get the ball out, rake and fit it that way and add everything in. But we just kind of sometimes use that blocking shield to help us in these contact situations where we can limit the contact a little bit within that. We still work the aiming points, the leverage, what shoulder we're tackling with, working everything through there, but it just helps the second player in terms of the contact there. Another one we worked, again, going back to the crash mat scenario where we just want to work on these guys driving their feet through contact. So we're just driving through the bag and knocking them straight back. So they want to give resistance, but now good for inside linebackers or people on that inside force where we're just driving back. So what we want to do is just, again, drive our feet, knock them back, and have the guy fall straight back onto the crash mat. Again, not worried about the other guy. The guy holding the bag in this, he's protected even more so, and it allows the guys to be a little more physical through it, really get a knee drive to go in. Saying this is all well and good. I just remember a time too where we were doing light contact drills and we ended up guys getting hurt, so it can happen anytime, but we do what we can to limit this stuff in here and work on that as we go through it. Another one kind of builds onto what Gabe did. We did a lot of pursuit stuff with trying to tackle, and we were trying to involve as many guys as we could in this. This is actually as I was getting ready to play JP and Colson there, they run a lot of that boundary hitch. So what we did was we set up kind of our moving wall of pursuit and our outside wall on this side and brought a player down to the alley. But we just set up places where we can tackle, so we can just run our pursuit off it. We can change direction, we can go, and then we just finish on the wheel. So we just use a lot of the equipment there to get our tackling in, use our targets, whether they're stationary or moving through all this. So this is just something we just try to combine a lot of guys as we're doing this in terms of an install rep session where guys will still get the tackle. We still coach up the form on these when we're watching on the film. We're still reviewing it with the coaches with our angles and things like that. But we do a lot of bag work just to help ourselves out with this in here. So we just work a bunch of different things and trying to get some tackles involved and pursuit angles on the rabbits and working our tap off tackle as well. So this is kind of the example here of our whiz tackle, where we go in, we want to attack the man, we want to just double underhand tap that hip and let him, again, keep running so the other guys have to come in and pursue as well. And finding our angles, and it works kind of first guy to the bag will get it, or you can adjust off of it there. And again, here's kind of just example of how it may look in a skelly period, especially when the ball's cut underneath. We want all our guys running to the ball. We're not worried about any thud period in skelly. Most of our skellies are just that whiz tap off tempo. But what we're trying to do is at the point of attack, get enough guys rallying to the ball, enough guys tapping off and turning and going, but we let the offense still go. So we want to take our angles here as we're coming across and tap off, but we just let this player keep running down the sideline. We get our edges set, but it's just that two-hand tap so he can keep running and score on every play. We understand where we've made the tackle and just finishing off on that. And then, the last one here. This is kind of one of the open field tackling drills that we do. You can see we kind of have that box set up here. And all we're trying to do is, again, that whiz tackle, but it teaches our guys how to set things up with their feet. So we have them on the inside out angle. You can vary the entry point for both guys, what side they're trying to attack, where their leverage hip is. But we do a lot of stuff where we want to close the distance, and then just that two-hand tap. We prefer to see his hands low down here, tapping his leverage hip. We're not trying to take away the ball, although running back will get hell for ball security on that one. But all we're doing is trying to work feet initiate contact, staying in good leverage, and attacking the hip of the ball carrier. So we can just get a good, nice two-hand tap off on a guy there. And that's kind of our drill as we do it. So we do a variety of things for receivers, DBs, backers. O-line, D-line can do similar stuff in terms of a board drill with low contact. But we do a lot of this stuff instead of live tackle. We can open it up in drills like this. It's not too big of a run-up. But this is something that we utilize a lot in terms of getting our feet, getting our body in position to make tackles. So that's kind of what I have there. Hopefully that you guys got something out of that. Welcome any questions anytime, but thanks, guys.
Great job. Now, one of the things I debate is the more educated some of these players are, the older they are, they already know the fundamentals. So I think you can afford to protect each other and quit the pounding on each other with these whiz periods. For younger players, new players, regardless of age, how do you think there should be or needs to be an early balance between showing them those red periods or green periods more frequently, just to get them a little more familiar with the contact before you can pull away and have confidence they do know how to go live safely? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's honestly the great balance that we're trying to all find here. And it's I think if you can teach the guys how to practice and stay on their feet, then you can push them a little bit further to tackle. I think if you start kind of live and going with it, then it's harder to kind of pull back when you need to. We struggled with this, honestly, our first year when we had 75 freshmen at university and trying to teach them how to do stuff like this. That's kind of what we did this thing and came up with it. But I think if you can teach the fundamentals, then kind of show them, okay, how to fit into a contact and stay on your feet. And then, okay, now you can go live. I think you might get a better result as you go through the year because it's sometimes harder to pull guys back at that point. Plus, I think it's for keeping the guys safe if they understand why you're doing it to start with. We're trying to keep everybody off the ground. We're trying to keep everybody healthy, especially when you have some high school rosters. I know you guys deal with maybe 20 to 30 guys if you're lucky. So it's kind of managing that around it and just showing them, okay, this is how you can fit in. This is how you can thud with staying on your feet and moving your feet through the contact point. This is how you protect your players. And then, okay, now we can go to some more impactful drills at a condensed area that might be able to help them out. But that's again, kind of reading your players and knowing who you have and where they are with this. But I don't think you can ever get enough of the fundamentals in terms of tackling, striking, blocking. That's something we constantly do and battle with guys, whether they're a fifth year or a first year. I don't think they can get enough of some of those fundamentals and work to improve in that as well. So, but the older team you have, the more you should be able to do that. But I think it's something to always keep working and emphasizing and going through.